Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen and today we're going to talk a little bit about dictionaries. Do you have a dictionary in your home? If you do, how many do you have? And how well do you know them? As you can see, I have one or two books in my home, and if I just move the camera a little bit, you can see my dictionary shelf there. I have a mixture of English language dictionaries, I have a thesaurus on there, and I have a selection of bilingual dictionaries, being a linguist. And the ones on the end that are so well used that they're pretty much unidentifiable are, needless to say, the ones I use the most. They are the Russian to English dictionaries, which I use when I'm translating. So in this video, we're going to take a closer look at dictionaries. What are dictionaries? Why do we have them? What information do they contain? And then, as usual, at the end there will be a little extract from classic literature to enjoy, which features a dictionary. When I was preparing for the video, I took a look, as I often do, in this rather large tome. This is the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Language by David Crystal, and it covers just about everything it's possible to cover to do with language. So I thought, I wonder if there's anything about dictionaries in there, and of course there was an entire chapter on dictionaries. The opening of the chapter, in which David Crystal introduces the topic of dictionaries, has some quite strong opinions in it about people's use of dictionaries or lack of it, and their knowledge of dictionaries and or lack of it. So here is a little flavour of what he says. For a book that is viewed with a level of respect normally accorded only to the Bible, it is remarkable how casually dictionary users treat their dictionaries. When people are asked what factors govern their choice of dictionary, most cite linguistically irrelevant matters such as price, pictorial content and size, not in terms of number of entries, but whether it would fit on a shelf or in a pocket. Many people expect a dictionary to contain encyclopedic information about historical events, people and places. Most admit they have never bothered to read the preface to their dictionary, the place where the layout and conventions of the book are systematically explained. As a consequence, they are unable to say what the various abbreviations and symbols mean, or why they are there. The general conclusion is inescapable. Most people who would check out every tiny feature of their new car before buying it are unaware of the power that lies under the bonnet of their dictionary. So some strong opinions indeed there from David Crystal. So let's take a look at dictionaries now and prove him wrong by getting to know our dictionaries better. First of all, why do we even have dictionaries? Let's take a look at that topic from the angle of the English language. The English language over the centuries, if not millennia, has been formed by lots and lots of other languages. Over the course of history, people have come to Britain from different parts of the world, bringing their languages with them and leaving a linguistic trail behind them. And then later on in history, people from Britain began to go to other parts of the world, and there they picked up more little bits of language which became part of the English language. So the English language is a huge mixture of lots of different influences. If the history of the English language is of interest to you, do take a look at a video I made earlier on that subject. I'll put a link to that in the description below. The English language became an entity in its own right around about the time when Geoffrey Chaucer was writing his work, for example, the Canterbury Tales. But in Britain at that time, there was a lot of regional variation in the language. People in one part of the country would speak the language quite differently to people in another part of the country, and there became a need to standardise the language so that people all around the country could understand each other. And with the advent of printing, this became even more important. If you printed a book in one place, you wanted people in another part of the country to be able to read it. So there became a need to standardise the language, and even in the time of Shakespeare there was no standardised spelling system, there was no dictionary that you could check your spellings in, and so people just hazarded a guess as to how to spell a word. So around the beginning of the 18th century there were various attempts to solve this problem. Various people set about the task of putting a dictionary together. But the most well-known and arguably the most successful in this was Samuel Johnson. Samuel Johnson, or Dr. Johnson as he's also known, made it his life's work to produce a dictionary of the English language. Johnson was a lexicographer. A lexicographer is a person who compiles dictionaries, and he paved the way for the huge range of dictionaries that have followed ever since, and he set the standards for future lexicographers and the field of lexicography. So let's take a look at a couple of the dictionaries on my shelf. Here in Britain, perhaps one of the most well-known dictionaries is the Oxford Dictionary. This one here is just the compact version of the Oxford Dictionary, so it doesn't include as much information as the full-blown work itself. But it is handy to have on a shelf. I do use it regularly to check the spellings and meanings of words when I'm writing. Collins is also a well-known dictionary publisher in the UK, and this is just a small children's version, which again doesn't contain huge amounts of information about each word. It just contains easy to understand definitions of the words. And then my most detailed dictionary that I possess on the shelf is the Chambers Dictionary. And if you're a Scrabble player, according to the information inside, Chambers is the official reference dictionary for the UK National Scrabble Championship. So this dictionary contains a lot more information than the other two dictionaries about each word that it contains. One thing that David Crystal mentioned in the extract we just looked at was the number of entries. That is how we measure the power of a dictionary. If you're comparing cars and the power of the engine of a car, you might talk about its horsepower. But when you're talking about a dictionary, we look at the number of entries. And this dictionary says it has 300,000 definitions. And if we compare that to the compact dictionary, this has 150,000 definitions. So the Chambers Dictionary is approximately, in car terms, twice as powerful as the compact Oxford Dictionary. Usually at the beginning of each dictionary there are a few pages explaining how the dictionary works, what all the abbreviations mean, and other information that helps you to use it to the full. If you have a bilingual dictionary, that information is often in the middle of the dictionary between the two languages. So turning to the inside of the dictionary and its contents, most people are aware that the information in a dictionary is arranged in alphabetical order. So the words are organised according to the alphabet. So let's have a little quiz. I've got 3 groups of words. Let's see how quickly you can organise these words into alphabetical order. The first one is the easiest. Can you put these words into alphabetical order? Orange, apple, pear, banana, strawberry. So in alphabetical order, we would begin with apple because it begins with A, which is the first letter of the alphabet. Then the second letter of the alphabet is B, and we have banana. third would be orange, fourth, pear, and the fifth, strawberry. But what if these words all begin with the same letter? Can you put these words into alphabetical order? Orange, octopus, obsolete, odd, osteopath. What we do when the words all begin with the same letter is we look at the second letter in the word and put them in order according to the second letter of the word. So the first word in this group would be obsolete because the second letter is B. Then that would be followed by octopus with a C in second place. Then odd, then orange, then osteopath. And then the third group of words is even more difficult because they have the same first letter and the same second letter. And some even have the same third letter. So what we have to do when arranging something in alphabetical order is to keep moving through the word until we find letters that are different and put those in alphabetical order. So, can you arrange these words in alphabetical order? Pear, person, peach, perceive, perhaps. So in first place would be peach, then pear, then perceive, perhaps, and finally person. Now let's compare two actual entries in two different dictionaries. So we're going to look at the little school dictionary for children and we're going to look at the big Chambers dictionary and look up the same word. So let's begin with frown. The children's version says, verb 1. If you frown, you move your eyebrows closer together because you are annoyed, worried, or concentrating. Noun 2. A cross expression on someone's face. So this definition doesn't use any abbreviations at all. It tells you that frown can be a verb or a noun and it uses the full words for those. And the definitions are nice and easy to understand. If we look up frown in the Chambers dictionary, what we get is much more detail and much more information, and it's presented much more compactly in order to fit all that information into a single volume. So first of all, after the word, we're told its pronunciation, which in the case of frown is actually the same because it's a very straightforward pronunciation. Then we have the letters VI, which tells us that this is a verb and it's an intransitive verb. So it gives us the meaning of the verb when it's used as an intransitive verb. Then we have the abbreviation VT, which tells us that frown can also be used as a transitive verb, and it gives us the meaning when it's used as a transitive verb. Then there is the abbreviation N, meaning noun. So if this word is used as a noun, what does it mean? So it gives us the definition. And then we're given some extra words that are made from frown. We're given an adjective, frowning, and its meaning. We're given an adverb, frowningly. And we're given a phrase, to frown on or frown upon. And then finally, we are given some etymology. Etymology tells us where the word has come from. It's the history of this word and how it has arisen. We're told it's from OFR, Old French. So that gives us much more information about the word than in the other dictionary. Let's take a look at a second word. Let's take a look at metal. The definition from the Collins School Dictionary says metal, noun, science. Metal is a chemical element such as iron, steel, copper or lead. Metals are good conductors of heat and electricity and form positive ions. Metallic, adjective. So it gives us the definition of metal, and it also gives us another word, metallic, which is an adjective which is formed from the word metal. When we look up metal in the Chambers Dictionary, we are given a lot of information. It is half a column's worth of information. We are given the pronunciation. We are given the definition of metal as a noun. We are given lots of words that are formed from metal. We're given some North American variants of some of these words too. Chambers Dictionary is a British publication, but it does include variants from around the world as well. And at the very end, we're given again the etymology. We're told it comes from Old French, which comes from a Latin word, which comes from a Greek word. Now let's think about bilingual dictionaries. Samuel Johnson's dictionary was a monolingual dictionary. It dealt with one language, the English language. However, anyone who is learning another language will find a bilingual dictionary very useful. It's a dictionary that can tell you what a word in one language would mean in another language. So bilingual dictionaries are in two halves. So in this Latin dictionary, you can see a line which marks where the two halves start and finish. So in the first half of this dictionary, you can look up a Latin word and it will tell you its meaning in English. And in the second half of the dictionary, you can look up an English word and it will tell you its meaning in Latin. And that is how most bilingual dictionaries work. Some time ago, when I was doing a beginner's course in Chinese, I was very interested to see how a Chinese dictionary might work, because the Chinese language has a lot of different characters, far too many to arrange in alphabetical order in one single volume. So how does that work? How do you look up a Chinese word in a bilingual dictionary? And the answer I discovered to that is that they use the pinyin system. Pinyin is a system of writing Chinese words in the Latin alphabet, the alphabet that we use, which was invented in the mid-20th century in order to make things like this easier. So although it does include the Chinese characters, the entries are arranged according to the pinyin version. So those are physical dictionaries, the dictionaries on my shelf with pages that you can turn. However, we are now living in the 21st century, and of course, we now use online dictionaries as well. There are many, many, many different dictionaries online with different strengths and weaknesses. So here are some of the ones that I use. If you are using British English, perhaps the ones to look out for are the Oxford Dictionary and the Cambridge Dictionary, the online versions of which are both very useful. If you are using US English, you might want to have a look at the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. For bilingual dictionaries, it's much harder to say because the dictionary that you use will depend on the language pair that you are working in. The advantages of online dictionaries are, of course, ease of reference. If you're working on a computer, the dictionary is already there at your fingertips. It's much easier to find. You just type in the word and it pops up. The other big advantage of an online dictionary is that it's being constantly updated. If you have a paper dictionary, it is frozen in time at the time of publication. So any new words that come into the language, any changes in meaning, are not updated in your dictionary. You'll have to buy a new dictionary every few years in order to keep your dictionary up to date. The disadvantage of online dictionaries, however, is that you can't have a look around the rest of the page. If you look up a word in a physical dictionary, you can see the word that you're looking for, but you can see the other words around it that may be related to it. and may give you extra context, which is less easily available in an online dictionary. Plus, you don't get the fun of turning the pages and testing your skills in alphabetical order. So to finish off, I said we would look at a passage from some classic literature. And the passage is from Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. And the passage comes from the very beginning of the book. In this book, the main character, Becky Sharp, and her friend Amelia are finishing school. They're about to leave school. And the headmistress, Miss Pinkerton, has a tradition that she always presents school leavers with a copy of Dr. Johnson's dictionary. Miss Pinkerton's claim to fame is that she has met Dr. Johnson, so she considers his dictionary to be a very valuable gift indeed, and makes sure that every girl who leaves her school possesses a copy of it. She is less inclined to give a copy to Becky Sharp, however, because Becky Sharp has not been the ideal pupil. So she's preparing a copy of the dictionary for Amelia. Miss Jemima, Miss Pinkerton's sister, slips in a copy for Becky Sharp as well. However, as you'll see, Becky Sharp is less than delighted with this gift. So, first of all, we are told Miss Pinkerton proceeded to write her own name and Miss Sedley's in the flyleaf of a Johnson's dictionary, the interesting work which she invariably presented to her scholars on their departure from the Mall. On the cover was inserted a copy of Lines Addressed to a Young Lady on Quitting Miss Pinkerton's School at the Mall, by the late revered Dr. Samuel Johnson. In fact, the lexicographer's name was always on the lips of this majestic woman, and a visit he had paid to her was the cause of her reputation and her fortune. And this is the passage when the girls finally drive away from the school in their carriage. "Stop!" cried Miss Jemima, rushing to the gate with a parcel. "It's some sandwiches, my dear," she said to Amelia. "You may be hungry, you know. And Becky Sharp, here's a book for you that my sister, that is I, Johnson's dictionary, you know. You mustn't leave us without that. Goodbye. Drive on, coachman. God bless you." And the kind creature retreated into the garden, overcome with emotion. But lo, and just as the coach drove off, Miss Sharp put her pale face out of the window and actually flung the book back into the garden. So, as you can see, Becky was not delighted to receive a copy of Samuel Johnson's dictionary. What I also found intriguing was the spelling of the word dictionary in the two paragraphs. There is certainly in my copy of the book a discrepancy between the two spellings, so I wonder whether or not that was deliberate on the part of Thackeray. So that was a little exploration of dictionaries. If you have a dictionary in your home, make friends with it. Take some time to get to know it better. Read the beginning or the middle if it's a bilingual dictionary. And read some of the entries and see if you can work out what all the information is telling you. And if you come across words that you're not familiar with when you're reading, then occasionally take the time to look one or two of them up in a dictionary and expand your vocabulary and your general knowledge too. Thank you very much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, happy reading and happy writing.